This is Father Dominic Holtz coming to you from Rome, Italy, with a word of hope for Wednesday of the 24th week in Ordinary Time, the memorial of St. Juan Macias. Juan Macias, the great Peruvian saint, one of the great saints of Lima, all his life, certainly all his religious life, wanted to spend all of his time in deep contemplation. It was said of him that if he could have had his way, no one would ever have known what his face looked like, not even his fellow Dominican friars. But that wasn't what ended up happening in his life. God and his prior had different plans for him, and he was asked to be the porter of the community, which is to say, the person who greets people at the door, visitors, of course, but also the poor seeking aid. He was also well known for having trained a donkey he would send throughout the streets of Lima. It had a sign on it asking for donations for the poor, and the donkey would go about, and when it returned, it would be filled with donations because everyone knew of the holiness of St. Juan Macias. Juan Macias learned then that although contemplation is a great and wonderful thing, and in fact at the heart of Dominican life, there is a greater gift, and that greater gift, that greater charism, is charity. St. Paul is telling us about that same message to the Corinthians and also to us. Earlier in the letter to the Corinthians, he had been distinguishing between those people who wanted the gift of tongues, and here he meant people whose contemplation of God was so deep that they had a private special language that only God understood. And as opposed to seeking for the gift of tongues, which he says is a good and marvelous thing, they should rather have asked for the gift of prophecy, because the gift of prophecy instructs others and so builds up the church. In today's reading, Paul takes that further. Just in case we think that doing the works of the church, like prophecy, building up people in their understanding of the faith, or even faith itself, faith enough to move mountains, isn't the highest gift to want. Why? Because they don't build up the church in the same way that charity does. Charity, after all, is nothing other than friendship with God. It's the means by which God lifts us up from our ordinary way of being and makes us his friends to share his divine life. And that's why St. Paul tells us that it is a charity which is the greatest of all, charity which endures. All the other gifts that we may have, great as they are, will pass away. But friendship of God will endure forever, and it will be the very heart and soul of our life in eternity. That's the message that Paul was trying to teach us, and that's the message that we can learn from St. Juan Macias. And that, my brothers and sisters, is a word of hope.